Now what we'll talk about is we'll talk about the modify commands. And the modify toolbar is to the right of the draw panel, and it contains the following commands among others. So there's erase, there's copy, there's mirror, there's offset, there's array, so on and so forth. And so first we'll enter the erase command, and we've already done it a little bit, either by clicking on the button or by typing in E. So I'm going to get rid of these objects by selecting them, and this is one of these commands that I could either use before or after. Okay, so note that when I hit E and enter, I can delete these objects after, or if I undo, and we'll talk about this in a second, but if I do U and enter, okay, and I hit E and enter, so again, this is one of those commands that I could either use before or after I select my objects. The first way I did it, I selected my objects first and then hit E or erase, or I can click on the tool button. Here what I did is I selected the command first, and then note that the cursor now changes from the crosshair to a square. And so this indicates that AutoCAD is expecting something to be selected. So then I can select my objects and hit enter, and they'll disappear. Okay, so next for the copy tool, let's just create a circle real quick. For the copy tool, if I enter the copy tool and select a circle, okay, I hit CO, okay, or I can go up to copy, or I can type in copy. I can either, again, do the command first, okay, and that's what you'll see with just this little, box that my cursor's changed into. So I can select my object, and then I can copy it and hit escape to get out of that command, or I can type in copy, select my objects, select my objects, and then type in copy and move it from one place to another. So it works both before and after. So at this point, AutoCAD, so as we started to look at the commands, if we look at a little bit further, so if I type in copy again, or if I hit enter, it's going to ask me to select my objects. So I'm going to select my objects and hit enter. So select objects, okay, means that I can either select one object or I can select multiple of them. When I hit enter, now what I'm doing is I'm getting into a next phase of the command. So now it's asking me to specify a base point. We didn't look at this as clearly in the first examples, but now you can see that we're slowing down a bit, and you can see that now it's asking us to specify a base point. It was before, but we kind of breezed over that a little bit. So at this point, AutoCAD is requiring the specification of a so-called base point for the copy operation. So this is done by clicking in the model space. So I could either have it be arbitrary, okay, or when we start to look into our object snaps, okay, and we'll look at that a little bit, we can be more specific about it. So I'm snapping from one point, and then it's going to ask me to specify a second point, okay? So that can either be specified by left clicking, okay, I can just click arbitrarily, or I can type in a numeric entry. And so in this case, if we want to copy that circle by 5 feet to the left of its original position, we pick the point of origin, and then we move the cursor in the direction that we would like to copy the object, and then type in the distance that we would like to copy it. So the copy command lets you copy as many times, also until you exit the command, and then once you're ready to exit command, you hit escape once you are done. Okay, so basically what that means is if I get rid of these guys and I type in copy, I select my object, I can, before, as we saw, I did it arbitrarily, now I can type in 5 feet, okay, 10 feet, and it snaps it to those distances, but it snaps it from this first base point. Okay, so from this to this is 5 feet, okay, from this to this is 10 feet. Okay, the move tool works in the same fashion by specifying a base point and then a distance or a second point, and the move tool only works once. So if I type in move and I select an object, I can click to specify my base point, and then I can move it 5 well, let's stay on the model space, 2 feet. Okay, so I just moved it over 2 feet. It doesn't make a copy, it just moves it. To introduce the O-snap button, so the O-snap function, okay, allows you to precisely connect objects to various points on other objects, corners, midpoints, intersections, etc. So the button is located down in the tool settings. Okay, you can click on the button to turn it on and off, and then there's a little arrow, okay, that's right next to it, showing that you can expand the menu. So if you click on it, you're able to access the settings and make sure that endpoint, midpoint, and center are on. Now, center works especially for circles, and then endpoints and midpoints. And as you start to, are common to other types of objects. As you start to work with it a little bit more, you can see that I have node on, I have intersection on. I typically don't have extension on, but I'll have perpendicular and nearest. So again, it's about figuring out how much, how many of those you want to have on, how many you want to have off. I find that if I have too many on, that it becomes a little cumbersome and nitpicky when I'm starting to draft. So I've found my favorites and I always keep those on. And so again, I make sure that it's on by clicking on it and making sure that the button is blue, or the hotkey for the O-snap is F3, and I can turn it on and on off and on that way. So basically what that means is if I, let's introduce a line into here. Okay, so for example, if we want to have a line, if I want, for example, one of my circles, okay, to connect to a line, I can type in CO. If I want to copy it, okay, to the end of my line, I'm going to copy it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mouse over it, and you'll see that this green indicator comes up. And if I just let go of my mouse for a second, it'll tell me that that's the center, and that's the object snap telling you what it is that it's snapping to. So I can click, and it'll click to that center, and then I can mouse over, whether or not I have my ortho on. If I mouse over and I see this square, okay, that indicates the endpoint, as we can see from, what it says if I let go of my mouse. And then I can click, and it'll snap, and hit escape. It'll snap that circle to the endpoint, the center of that circle to the endpoint of that line. If we want to have a line at the start corner of one of the rectangles, so for example, if I draw a rectangle, and if I want to have a line start at the corner of one of the rectangles, okay, I'm going to enter the line command, and before left clicking to specify the first corner, okay, I'm going to hover close to the corner, and it's going to activate that endpoint. You'll see that it wants to snap to that endpoint. And so you'll see that square appear around the corner, indicating that if you left click now, okay, the first point of the line will snap at that corner. So if you click and move the cursor close to the center of one of the circles, okay, so if I again repeat that line command, you'll see again that the smaller circle will appear, highlighting the center of the circle. And if you click to specify that point, then you've now connected the line, okay, and I've created a line from the center of that circle. Okay, and then I can hit escape. So, as I mentioned before, I can either click this on and off, okay, in the tool settings, or I can type or hit the F3 button in order to turn the O-snap on and off. Okay, so as we've already seen a little bit, there's also the undo and redo commands. So if I want to undo any of those actions, if I type in U and enter, okay, it'll undo the last commands that I've done. So the undo undoes a command, and to undo multiple commands, you can continually hit enter to undo, to keep undoing the commands. But if you hit undo too many times, you can redo as well. However, if I type in redo, okay, you can see that if I type it in, okay, the redo command must immediately follow the U or undo command. However, up above, okay, you can see that there's the undo and the redo, in these quick settings up above here, and I can undo and redo, and then if I expand the list, you can see that it does keep a history. So I can go back into my history of what I've done, and I can redo multiple commands that way. Okay, so the redo command only does one redo after the undo command. The undo command does as many as possible, but if you want to redo multiple steps, okay, you can go into the tool button up above. Okay, and then the undo also has the multiple steps, but the undo as a command also undoes multiple steps too as well.